Welcome to Let's Get Real with HR. I'm your host, Constantine Sky, and this is a podcast that aims to take a look at some of the common issues that we have in HR, and perhaps we don't talk about them a lot of times. And today on the show, we have Reimund Nienaber from EDLIGO. He is a consulting director, and I'm going to pass it over to him to introduce himself a little bit, tell us a little bit about his career thus far, and also about EDLIGO as a platform.
Right, yeah, great. Thank you for having me, Constantine. It's really great to be here and to share a little bit. A bit about myself. Reimund had, many years international career in Nokia, my previous company, that I worked in more than 25 years there, had technical and HR roles, was blessed to work in Southeast Asia and in Latin America. So it was really great, interesting time, get to know many people, many cultures. What they all had in common was that they wanted to develop. There's an urge of development and the business need actually to have people develop. And that somehow sets the scene as well for the work that I'm doing today for EDLIGO, where I'm consulting companies to actually get a great start in people analytics, especially talent analytics, where we help them to actually better understand what the people know, where they want to drive the business as well from strategic point of view and what competences are connected there so that they can actually help their people to be ready, future-proof.
Awesome. You made the distinction between talent analytics and people analytics. What is the difference between the two?
Well, that's a really cool question, So talent analytics, I really like to look at the talent portion, the competencies, or what we're talking as well about today. What are the competencies, the skills, the competency, capabilities, abilities, knowledge, skill, all this is some of what we're trying to capture. And as well to help companies identifying their strategic direction, where they want to move. And when you're looking at people analytics all over, can be many more things, many more facets. It can be much more as well about workforce planning, about leave data. It could be about how to combine all this. So there are just many more data points that we can actually look at. But we in EDLIGO, we really prefer actually looking at the talent data of what's really important for organizations to understand for the people from talent points.
Yeah, that's right. What I was thinking and why I find EDLIGO to be such an interesting platform is that you don't call yourself a people analytics platform. So people know me as a people analytics guy here in Canada and around the world because I talk about a lot of topics in people analytics. But what you're talking about is talent analytics. And at first I thought that you were talking about recruitment, but it looks like a lot of things that you're talking about is how do you actually quantify that talent within the individual? What does the person bring to the table? And then how do you deploy it successfully?
Yeah.
Is that about right?
Yeah, that could be right. Of course, with EDLIGO, you can actually as well source inside your organization who has what competency, who has what skills, and then you can basically use this information and find the right people for succession, for whichever role you may actually just want to fill. Just looking at the people from competence point of view and not from the nose factor, how we individually feel about someone. So you get a very, sober assistance and proposals through AI actually as well on who as well to look at. Because what we see many times, those ones that speak up loudest, that raise their hand quick, they're usually the first one sitting at the table or being discussed as successes. But we really just put all these aside, all these things, and we really focus on the competencies of the people, on the skills that that we really just look at these portions. And that's really very helpful, very often eye-opening as well. It helps as well tremendously when you're looking at it from D&I and B points of view, so where you are really having just this naked data, looking at it and let the system giving you a proposal on who would be the right people for the job. And that's sometimes mind-blowing.
I'm wondering if you might have any case studies that you might be able to share around some of the ways where talent analytics have provided that additional level of insight, just to make it a little bit more concrete.
Well, of course, for case studies, we have actually quite tons of case studies, as well prepared. And if people are interested, they can check out our website at edligo.com, where we have lots of these case studies as well published. I think one important case study, as I just said, is in the succession planning. I have been, as I said earlier, in a really large corporation, so more than 100,000 people. And I have been as well a leader in that organization. And we were always at this annual succession planning. And we just, how it works, we send around an email. We say, Reimund, please give me your top 3 candidates that could potentially succeed. And then I said, I'm just scratching my neck a little bit. And then I pull out the names, get rid of that topic very quickly. And that's how it was usually done in the past. And now when we're using EDLIGO, we're actually checking out who is now in the realm of that part of the organization that could potentially actually then assume the position of Reimund. Should he get hit by the bus or just leave the company? You never know. And then suddenly we have Peter, Paul, and Mary and Jessica. And Reimund, I, for instance, probably never thought maybe about Paul and Jessica before. But they just suddenly appear because from competency point of view, we look at those. And then I can actually get to know them potentially. If I don't really actively know them or never considered them, I could actually involve myself to really get to know them better. Still, I have to make an assessment, and I have to make a judgment as well. Do I really want to do I think these people are right? Or is this maybe a glitch in the AI? But most of the times, actually, this is what customers telling us, that this was really an eye-opener to them, and they were glad actually being able then to speak to these people and got to know them much better, as well as they learned about their interests much better. And that's one of the predominant use cases I could just quickly share.
Yeah, it's a great use case, and I think it's actually creates a parallel with one of the things that I like to talk about is the difference between skills and competencies. But before we go there, with your case study essentially made me think about selection based on role and who is the closest to the individual, to the leader who is looking at the succession, versus looking at it more objectively around what is actually required for the role. And typically, historically, organizations have been thinking about it from the lens of competencies.
Yes.
More recently, we're starting talking about skills and skill-based organization. How do we establish mobility within the organization based on the different skills? What is the difference between skills and competencies?
Well, there have been quite some doctors writing about it and writing habilitations around it, and also professors writing about it. And I have as well seen companies now, and just a recent discussion that I had in Berlin, where we had an exhibition there on HR analytics and AI, where we met companies that say, actually, we put it all alike. We just equalize it all. We don't want to do this distinction anymore because it's so complicated. And you ask 10 people, you get 12 opinions about it. So it's really complicated. But like from scientific point of view, if you want to look at it like that, then you can say that skills are actually contained within competencies. So skills are actually like a subset, and competencies are rather actually knowledge, skills, and abilities, when you're looking at the competencies themselves. And these are items that you need to actually be aware of, and you need to know so that you can actually fulfill the role of today. But if you want to look at the role of the future, you need to have actually once more, you need to have a lot of additional capabilities and be able to demonstrate as well behaviors. Competencies like to as well include the demonstration of behavior. So you're able to do this, you're able to show this, while skills are usually having as well a shorter durability. Competencies love to be more long-term, while skills may actually need to change quicker, because we have always new things, the developments in technology, and you need to learn how to turn the screw to the right. Tomorrow, maybe you need to learn how to turn the screw to the left, and then but these are all small pieces, but the overall screw turning competency, is something that is maybe having a bigger level or bigger view.
I love that distinction, and I've never really thought about it in the same way. Usually, people use skills and competencies interchangeably, like you said, but thinking of competency as an outcome almost, and as a skill as an action that needs to happen to deliver that outcome is a great distinction. So with that, do you think that the trend into the skill-based organization going to continue into the future? Or do you think we're going to sort of merge back into that skill competency space where we use them interchangeably?
Very good question. So I think that for many companies and people actually in these organizations, it becomes too complicated. Is this now a competency? Is this a skill? Is this a knowledge? Is it an ability? I just basically think if you require this as an organization for the future, that your people can do certain things in your organization, call it whatever you want to. So as long as it helps to progress the organization and the people, call it as you like it, call it a competency, call it a competencies, call it skills, call it knowledge, and but just be very clear when you're formulating it of what do you really want the people to be able to deliver today or in the future. And don't make it overly complicated. And leveling it to say, well, it could be actually all the same, makes it then significantly easier. It only, there is a pitfall because you have potentially thousands of skills, but you don't have that many competencies. So you have to watch as well your granularity on which level, how granular you want to go with this. So competencies make it easier to actually group skills below. If you think of a hierarchy, if you say capabilities I have on top, and then I have competencies, and I have below competencies, I have skill, knowledge, and abilities. And if you structure this, then a certain competency may as well be very role dependent, and different roles could have same competencies but different underlying skills, as well depending on the level of seniority. So it can be very complex, but I think it is. My proposal is actually always to say, well, if you have trouble with these terms, just think of competencies and skills in an equal way, but don't get lost in granularity.
Yeah, there is that intersection between the very granular skills that can apply to essentially multiple jobs. And I'm thinking about more traditional, very old school work design perspective, where we're thinking about how do we deliver on the outcomes of the job via the different tasks. And now we are essentially adding the skill. Which skills do you need to deliver the task successfully so that you can deliver the outcome of the job successfully? So there is quite a bit of that complexity around the nomenclature.
But when I can interject here, I mean, the skill will tell you very much on, if I stay with the example, on how do you turn the screw to the right? Okay. But the competency will have not only the skill on how to turn it to the right, but if you have to go to a client and have to turn the screw to the right, and the client would like to get that explanation, then you need to have as well an additional skill or competence, for instance, how to explain this to the client, how to remove fear from them, how to work with them, how to work with your interfaces and other things. So your task is to go to a client and turn the screw to the right, but your overall competency, that on how you actually have to execute this thing, what you're supposed to do, that makes the overall competency. And so it's a little bit wider way of delivering the job, because the way on how to turn the screw to the right could be decisive on if the client will ever call you again.
That's right. And that's the ultimate outcome for any business, is making sure that the client calls you again. Because that essentially means that you did your job really well and the client is happy and satisfied and you provided a lot of value, which I absolutely love. One of the things that also comes to my mind is around the complexity of all of those skills and competencies and all of the different definitions. It's whatever we call them within organizations. How do companies handle that?
Another very good question. So it's not that easy, to handle this. And my view is always like, if I, for instance, I remember, for instance, behavioral competency, for instance, they were like tons. And I remember, we have used behavioral competencies of a large organization. Everybody knows them. And years ago, they had about, I think, 120. And they have been shrinking these now to, I think, 34, or around 30, So, and which is very interesting, because they have discovered that when I actually use this one, for instance, the competence A, I could find actually probably 5 other competencies as well in that one, or I could interpret them into those. So, and in that way, they actually have then reduced granularity. And that, I think, is a very nice practice to think, do I really need to have all these skills or competencies individually described? Then I really get lost in this granularity. And as this other big consultancy company has been doing it, so they have been then shrinking the number of competencies and grouped them among other ones. And therefore, and then they found terminology that helped to actually allow to include these other ones in there. And from the skills and other competencies that organizations want to use, I would recommend the same, that people sit together. And I know all the companies there will have very smart people, and they have all individual naming has all great justification for sure. But people won't understand in the organization why potentially things that sound rather the same as well from content point of view, why they all need to have different names. Can we not? And simplification is key.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And thinking about kind of the factor analysis type of consolidation of the different variables under the same umbrellas that are actually distinct from each other versus measuring the same thing. So from today's conversation, some takeaways for me is the difference between skills and competencies, in particular, focus on the outcome and then turning the screw, the action itself. The combination of the different competencies or skills that you need to bring out there to the clients, and also thinking about simplification as an overarching term for how do you organize the different competencies together. One last question before we finish the podcast. Where we are towards the end of the year, 2023, what are some of your predictions for talent analytics in 2024?
Well, I think talent analytics is going to get much bigger. And as well, there will be more companies discovering actually that they actually have no information or not sufficient information to make good decisions about their people or about the investments they need to take in order to bring people with their competency from A to B. And we always hear that there's a lack of skilled workforce. So companies can actually not allow that their good workers are actually leaving the organization, because they may think today we might not need them in future. That why not to reskill or upskill the people? Then they already have people that bring the information, have the knowledge of the past of that organization, and can easily learn something new to continue to be valuable. And that helps very much when you think about upskilling and reskilling and collecting as well the information that you need for that. So that's going to be more important, and for many companies in many sectors, in many industry sectors, I believe so.
Yeah, awesome. I cannot disagree with you. I think that the more objective approach to skills, competencies, and generally bringing more people analytics to organization is going to become more and more important. We've seen it over the last couple of years, and I think that this trend is going to continue. It was a pleasure to have you on the podcast, Reimund, and I'm going to throw the different links for EDLIGO as well as to your information about you into the show notes. But yeah, it was really great to have you here and talk about competencies and skills.
Thank you for having me, Konstantin. It was great to be here.
All right. And I'll see you all next week.
All right. Thank
Cheers.
you. Bye.